Hey, this is Wilson. No Jason this week, as always. No Galvez either. I don't know what he's up to these days. But I do have a friend of mine uh, who Galvez and I went to high school with. This guy's an author as well as a basketball fan, especially the Lakers. He's a big time Lakers fan, just like Galvez and I. And we're going to preview the NBA Finals today. So I'd like to welcome to the show my good friend Shane Murray. How are you doing, Shane?
Yeah, you could have mentioned I was a hooper too, but I was all right. I'm gonna let that slide. But
Uh,
yeah, I'm
you're a
what's
hooper
up?
too? I mean, come on now. What are you? You're gonna start off tooting your own horn, and I mean, what's going on here?
This thing like this hoop has always been first for me. So
Okay,
these more people should know that. But yeah, we gonna go ahead and move forward.
okay. Shane says he's a hooper. I know Shane. Like Shane, we used to play. We played in high school, but okay, Shane's a hooper. Giving him that. I don't want to sell the man short. Um, So the NBA Finals start. Right, this is we're recording this Tuesday night. The NBA Finals start Thursday in Golden State. Uh, the Boston Celtics advanced in a Game 7 that ended up coming out of the wire, even though it shouldn't have. That's kind of the story of this Celtics team. Is if you look at it, after they're really impressive in sweeping Brooklyn, and then but then against Milwaukee, they probably wouldn't have beat Milwaukee if Chris Middleton had been healthy. He didn't play a game in that series, and they still have to go 7 games in that one. So they definitely probably, I mean, it's not even a probably, they definitely would not have beaten Milwaukee. Um, the series against, this last series against Miami, Tyler Harrell was very limited for the last 4 games, I think it was. He ended up coming back for game 7 to play, but he could only play, I think it was 7 minutes. He just couldn't, he gave it a go, but he didn't have anything. He had a groin injury. And that series still went 7 games without Miami having their second best player for, more than half the series, their second leading scorer anyway. But regardless, Boston has advanced and they'll face a Golden State team that, uh, but it seems to be playing better. I think I look at this series and I think number one, like I said, I mentioned how these last 2 rounds Boston has really not been impressive. You just don't really know which team of theirs is going to show up. Tatum, I mean, he was better, I think, later in this Miami series, but he's kind of inconsistent. You know, really Brown, I think, is probably the more consistent player, but Tatum has the higher ceiling. And then I just look at history. I mean, it's strange because on the one hand, I feel like Boston on paper, um, they're I mean they're a much younger team. You have Curry who's 34, Thompson and Green all of the age of 30 now. And it's just you can kind of look at it and you go because this Golden State team, they're not the same team that they've been in the past. Curry, he's not the same supernova. He's still a very, very, very good player, but he's not the same supernova type of player that he was in his, at his peak. Which I would say last year he was still at that level, but this year you could see some slippage. Um,
I
Thompson, of
think you're
course.
missing the big picture.
Sorry, say that again.
I think you're missing the big picture
Okay, what do you mean by that?
because you're saying they're not that young because you're looking at the core of Draymond, Steph, Clay. But the last 2 years of them falling off and Clay being out, they had a chance to develop their G League players and develop quote unquote young core off their bench. So they can throw in a Kumanga, um, a Moody, a Jordan Poole, a Wiggins, um, Kevon Looney, so they can switch it out with one of the core players at times and match the youth and athleticism of Boston. So it's not the same Golden State, but it's a mixture, nice mixture of young and old right now. It's probably the most depth they had since the first championship, where Harrison was there. So not just old old versus young versus old. Is actually changing of the guard a little bit with a remix, kind of like how San Antonio was changed and evolved during their last title run. So
Yeah,
it's a little different.
yeah, I agree with that part. I said the same thing on Twitter that this Golden State team reminds me of those last two first finals teams. They lost in 13, which and then came back and won in 14. I mean, they came about as close as you can come to going back to back and not doing it. And that was when you had Parker, Ginobili, Duncan, and they were older. Duncan was still the leader, but he wasn't the same player of the MVP Duncan. And then you had Kawhi, the young guy. He's like basically the Jordan Poole in this situation, and Curry's the Duncan. But my point basically is that at the top, uh, you know, at this point in their careers, you would kind of think maybe Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown would be, two of the top three players in this series. But when I look at it historically, I just wonder is Jason Tatum at this when he was first team All NBA this year, but he's 24. I think Brown is 25. Is Jason Tatum? I mean, Michael Jordan didn't win his first. I said the same thing on Twitter. Michael Jordan didn't win his first ring until he was 28. The same thing with Shaq. LeBron didn't win his first one until he was 27. Is Jason Tatum about to win his first one at 25? And are Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown as a duo at this point in their career, are they going to be the team that stops Golden State from winning, a fourth championship? It's just kind of
What you're forgetting is MJ didn't win until he was 28 because he got Scotty super late. Shaq didn't win until he was 28 because he had to go through his growing pains, and Kobe had to evolve, and then they got a new coach. In this case with Boston, they have a core that grew together for like the last 5 or 6 years. They got a solid coach. It's just a matter of them seizing the moment if they want the moment. Even though I'm not really trying to see them win, but seize the moment if they want the moment. But they're also tackling a juggernaut. So it's a matter of, are they going to step up, or are they going to fall to the minds of the Golden State's dynasty again?
yeah. I mean, you're right. This Boston team. This is now that conference. The conference that just finished the third conference finals that they've been in since they had Tatum and Brown. So that was 2018 when they lost LeBron, 2020 when they lost to the Heat, and so it's every 2 years they've been in the conference finals. And now they finally made the finals. But I just look at it and I don't know. I don't know if, like I said, if they I just kind of like I said, this Golden State team is not what it was in my opinion. And they won 53 games. Don't get me wrong, they won 53 games this year with Thompson missing half the season. Draymond missed almost half the season. He missed 36 games, I think. Then Curry got hurt at the end of the season. They still won 53 games. This is probably a 60 win type team if they're healthy the whole season. Almost definitely. But I just think when I watch them, they seem more by committee now. Whereas in the past, it was Curry who you were expecting to get 30 plus every night, and then Thompson in his prime was one of the best probably the best two-way shooting guard in the league. Draymond, because he never really had as much responsibility, on offense, at least as a scorer, he's probably the guy who's closest to what he was. He hasn't really fallen off any defensively. He's had years. I mean, he used to be a better rebounder, but he's probably actually the closest to what he was, what he's been at his best. But then you throw in Jordan Poole, who, I mean, there are times when really Jordan Poole looks like he might be the best player on the Warriors sometimes. And then Andrew Wiggins, what he brings as like you said, a 3-and-D wing. They've really, like kind of changed the course of his career, kind of. Not that he was ever a bad player, but they just changed kind of the perception of him has changed now that he's on such a on a winning team, in Golden State. But when I just look at the matchup overall, um, I don't know. I just, like I said, on paper, it kind of seems like Boston maybe should have the advantage with having two young stars like Tatum and Brown. But at the same time, I go, are Tatum and Brown good enough to to win a title over a Golden State team that is, trying to expand and build on the dynasty that they already have? And they took 2 years off from being a championship level team, and to come back, we know everybody there, Kerr, Curry, Thompson, Green, they want this one bad. And I just don't know if Boston with Tatum, and because Jason Tatum, as good as he is, like I said, he's not Michael Jordan, he's not Shaq, he's not LeBron James. And it took them, they were like I said, in their later 20s. They weren't 24 years old when they won their first championship. But Jason Tatum is gonna do it. It's just hard for me to see that happening.
I mean, he doesn't really need to be Michael Jordan. He just needs to be him. But I don't see it just because this ain't enough depth. Um, it, sometimes Marcus Marcus Smart can be the third wheel, but other than that, you got a bunch of role players who you don't know who's going to step up or not. Al Horford's giving them some good minutes, but he's not really a scorer anymore. Marcus Smart's backup. Pritchard, he's cool at times, but he seems like he's only on when he's at home. So what's gonna happen when he's on the road? And then they traded away Schroeder, so there's no quote unquote six man on their team that can like be a game changer. So it's just a matter of can Jalen Brown and Tatum get you 30 a night every night, and even then that might not be enough. So, but Jason Tatum's gonna at least get you one or two. So that's why I said six. But in terms of what you said, the more Golden State's more about committee. You like looking at that as a bad thing, or it's really not. That makes them more dangerous actually and hard to guard if you by committee. You can't just key in on Clay and Steph. That's why Steph historically doesn't have good playoff games, specifically in the finals, because you can key in on them too easily. Whereas now, you can take a break and be like, let Jordan Poole go off for a minute, and then or let Clay go off for a minute. Maybe let Wiggins get his, and then save his legs for the third or fourth quarter in crunch time, and then go to work that way.
Well, the reason I said that is because if you look at the history of the game, there's only been a few teams that kind of won that way, kind of, which is like I mean, it's kind of, I mean, it's disrespect to Curry to compare this any team that he's on to a team like the 2004 Pistons, or even the like that Spurs team I mentioned, with the of 2013 and 2014, because it's still someone Curry's averaging, I think, like 27 points a game in the playoffs. It's just that he's not the same nightly uh like threat to put on a just a complete fireworks display like he was at his peak. Um, but I just think in the history of the game, most of the teams that have won championships, it's been a pecking order where they had a one or two superstars at the top, an all-star caliber player at the in the third position. Golden State before, if you look at even, I'm not even counting the Durant years, those first two championship years of theirs where Curry was the MVP of the league in both years. And the second year they won 67 games the first year, won the title. The next year they won 73 games and came one win. They're up 3-1 in the finals and came one win from winning the title. And Curry won the MVP both years. The second year he was unanimous, had one of the greatest seasons in history on offense in 2016. So, and usually that's the type of team that wins a championship is a team that has that type of singular, like Giannis last year, like Jordan, like Shaq, like Hakeem, like Kobe. You could go on and on. So that's the reason that I say that there haven't been many teams that won without, a player who was, basically an MVP. Uh, which I think Curry started the season. Obviously, he has two MVPs, and he was an MVP candidate last year. And he's been an MVP type player basically for the last 10 years. But I think this year he started the MVP race, but he was never really playing as well as he's played in years past, and he started playing a little bit better towards the end of the season, and then he got hurt, and then in the playoffs he's been good, but he's just not as consistent as he used to be, and it just doesn't feel the same way watching them. Uh, it's more that you have to worry about Curry always, but you have to worry about Thompson always. But then Poole, and you never know what Wiggins might do, but he'll be messing around and he'll get 30 or something like that. You just never know. So, and but it's like it's not the same. But that's the reason that I say that about the by committee thing, is because it's not. That's not usually how it's done when it comes to winning championships. But they're here, and you said them in 5 or 6. I feel the same way. I see them being up 3-1. I think they'll win the first two at home probably. Boston probably wins game 3 at home. And then the Warriors, I think, will win game 4. And then from there, it's like, can they close out in 5? Are they really 4 games to 1 better than this Boston team? Probably not. But then they'd have to go to games. They'd have to go back to Boston for game 6 to close it out. But actually, I think they can do that. So I think we have the same pick, uh, which is Golden State in 6.
Right, right. And in terms of you talking about committee, not winning by committee, I think you have to go back and look at history again. Like, yes, they had superstars that led, but if you look at the Kobe and Powell teams, they were at least 10 deep. Detroit, even though I like to give them credit, they were at least 10 deep. The Bulls were at least 8 deep. So not just about the superstars taking over, it's about the role players being stars in their roles as well. The Ron Harpers, the Tayshaun Prince, the Robert Ory's, the Jordan Farmar and Derek Fishers, the Lamar Odoms. The list goes on and on. That's who determines if you're going to win a championship or not. In terms of the series go, you got to remember too, the format changes now. I think it's 2-3, 2-1, something like that.
No, it's two
So
two one 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 now.
2-2-1-1-1. So the format changed. So um, in terms of Golden State, it's going to be hard to get one in Boston. So I was I would look for them to split the first two road games, but I would say they probably lose those two and then close it out. Try to close it at home to wrap it up. But
So how do you see it going on? Because that seems like that'll be games. You think it'll go 7 if you're saying that?
no, I still say it goes 6, but
So what
I'm just
happens the
saying
first two in Golden State?
what happened?
I said, what do you think will happen the first two in Golden State?
I think it's going all each game is going to be super tight, and then Golden State just uh, finds a way with their experience to make big shots and close it out. Uh, First two games in Golden State, Boston, because of how they play in Boston, could potentially be a blowout one of those games in Boston, and then Golden State figures it out, and then at least gets one. Then it might come back and be a split back and Golden State, and then but overall I see it going at least six, and either they I think they'll close it out at home, but
Well,
but second,
game five would be in Golden State. Game six would be in Boston. Game seven would be in Golden State.
I think the only way it goes seven is if the powers that be take over and they want to see Boston win and then see it close out and go to state in seven. But otherwise, it's going six.
All right, so that means you think Golden State is going to close it out in Game six in Boston.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So, okay, so that's that. So now just here at the end a little bit, I forgot that the Lakers hired Darvin Ham as their next head coach. I was hoping it would be Mark Jackson because I feel like it just needs to be somebody who, if you look at the history of the Lakers, if you look at Pat Riley and Phil Jackson, who won a combined, 9 championships as the head coach of the Lakers, the most successful coaches in Lakers history have been these big personalities, big egos, guys who were, in a way just as famous and just as important, maybe not just as important, but just as big of a deal as the guys they were coaching. Pat Riley in the '80s was a superstar. I mean, Magic was a superstar. Kareem was a superstar. Worthy was a superstar. Uh, but I mean, Pat was too. And Phil Jackson in the 2000s, he was almost pretty much as big as Shaq and Kobe were, as far as just in the game of basketball, that kind of star power. So, um, I was hoping it would be Mark Jackson because he has that type of personality, that big yeah, big ego, and just I know I like to say, guys who think of themselves as like, the greatest thing that ever happened to the game. I know Mark Jackson thinks very highly of himself and his abilities. Uh, so, but it ends up it's going to be Darvin Ham, who's I think he's been an assistant. I think he was in Milwaukee under Budenholzer, and before that he was in Atlanta under Budenholzer, and so. I just think that I don't know. I mean, we're just gonna have to see. It's just I mean he's an unknown basically. I mean he's been an assistant, and so now we're gonna have to see if he can how he can handle the hot seat. And having an old LeBron James, an injury prone Anthony Davis, and a Russell Westbrook who, is probably going to be back. I heard some reports today about that maybe Brooklyn, but if Kyrie opts in, they might be interested in trading Kyrie for Westbrook, which I find that hard to believe. Um, so Westbrook is probably going to be here, and we have to see if Darvin Ham has any idea what to do and how to try to make that whole situation work. Shane, you're a big Lakers fan, like I am. How do you feel about Darvin Ham being the new head coach of the Lakers?
Well, just like you, I wanted Mark Jackson, and against um popular opinion, I wouldn't mind Doc Rivers.
I wouldn't
Just
have minded Doc Rivers either. That's right.
That's just me, and I was kind of surprised given how Phil was leading the search. I was kind of surprised Brian Shaw didn't get a look, or
Right.
um or Sam Cassell didn't get a call. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm I'm happy Darvin Ham is getting the opportunity, but it's a wait and see situation for me as well. But in different sense of when when they were pointing out why they chose Darvin Ham and why he made an impression of him, it was more so in so many words that LeBron and AD and Russ, if he's here, ain't gonna be able to punk him.
Okay.
Wasn't about, oh, we like his IQ. It wasn't about, or his X's and O's. It was about, oh, he has a strong presence. He
Hmm.
commands the locker room. And so, and that was also some of the same praises um, they gave Luke Walton when he got hired.
Hmm.
So, in that sense, but he is family. He was part of the Lakers staff when um, during the Kobe days when Bynum was here. So
Hmm.
he has that working with him. He is a player, former player, even though he was more so known as a dunker, but he never a player nonetheless. He has a ring with the Pistons, even though technically didn't play that much with them, but nevertheless he was still part of that team, so give him credit for that. And he's been a long time assistant with Buttonhoser with the Hawks and the Bucks and won a championship with them. So he has the that Giannis system. He can adapt here if he gets the right pieces. He may be able to find a different look for Westbrook if he stays, and they can find common ground in some areas. Because if you go watch, I watch Laker Nation all the time, and they have someone who breaks down their offense and who broke down the Bucks offense. And it's offense called five and out, where everybody spreads out and they take turns of who's in the dunker spot. So there's a possibility they like they might look for a stretch five, whether in the draft or during free agency that fits that offense, and it might give a Westbrook some different looks. But I was real surprised that they were the Lakers are not only letting him pick his own staff, but are not allowing Kurt Rambis in the coaches meetings, and they're giving him that much that much power and leverage. Where when Ty Lue was off the job, they didn't let him pick his own staff, and when Vogel came on, he was forced to take Jason Kidd, who was quote unquote the uh, successor to him if anything fails. And Kurt Rambis was all in Vogel's meetings. So it's kind of interesting that first time head coach is getting so much power.
Hmm.
So but it's gonna be interesting to see how it works. I'm confident, but I feel also Laker fans are very toxic. So I feel like if he starts off slow, they'll try to look to fire him again, which is ain't right, but it is what it is. But um, I figure um he's gonna get the right coaching staff in, or I hope he gets the right coaching staff in, and I'm hopeful it's gonna turn around. Like just the Lakers, they don't get down for long. So we just got number 17 not too long ago, so we'll be in the running for 18 again.
All right. All right, Shane, man. I wanna thank you for coming on the show, man. Uh do you have anything that you want to plug? For those who don't know, Shane had a book that came out recently called the '90s Poetry Book, and I did the artwork for it. So Shane and I are kind of like I mean, we do we've collaborated before on a few different things. Shane, you want to plug? Tell people where they can buy the book, or you want to plug your social media or anything like that?
So nice poetry book. You can get on worldstagepress.org. Just go on worldstagepress.org and search for 90s poetry book, and you can get it off the link there. Um, Also have two other books, Civil Disturbance, Boyhood and Manhood. You can get off our website. smartenterprises.com. Um, there's an audio book coming for 90s Poetry book real soon, so look out for that. And you can follow me on Instagram, Cali Raised 31, CALIRAISED 31. And yeah, you can look out for me that way.
All right, man. Thanks again, Shane. So before we get out of here, just a reminder to rate, review, and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts. The show is also on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and every other major podcatcher. Make sure to follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at TC Pod Network and to like it on Facebook. Just search for the Complete Podcast Network. Send feedback and mailback questions to CompleteLakersPodcast at gmail.com. We are out.